Hey everyone, how's it going? Forrest here, again with another installment of my complete analysis of all of J.S. Bach's chorale harmonizations. Today we're looking at Warum betrübst du dich, mein Herz, which translates to, Why are you afflicted, my heart? So all in all, this is a pretty interesting chorale. It has some twists and turns harmonically that make it, it has its own particular contour. And the fact that it's able to pump so much harmonic intrigue into such a short form makes it interesting as well. But I think we should just hop right into the analysis, and I could talk about the interesting harmonic tidbits as we get to them. 2 flats in the key signature. We start with G major, and we end with G major. So I think we are in the key of G minor, because that's what the key signature reflects, and the overall harmonic makeup of the piece is mostly in G minor. But we start off with a G major chord over B, and the way that we would analyze that is not uppercase 1 like we would at the final cadence, but rather 5/6 of 4, because G major is the dominant of C minor, and C minor is our subdominant, which is also the next chord. We get a passing tone in the melody, and we get this C here as well. So if we look at this, we would get A natural, C, and E flat, which is kind of like a passing 2/6 chord, but I don't really think it contributes that much to the melody. It just has it, or to the harmony. It has just an interesting melodic profile when aligned with the bass. We then have G, B flat, D, and B flat, which is our tonic triad in root position. Some passing tones in the middle voices, or the inner voices rather. And then we have D, D, F sharp, and A, which is our dominant D major in root position. And instead of going to G, we go up to B flat, D, G, and D. So it's still a tonic triad, just in first inversion. So we get like a leap of a tenth, or spans the interval of a minor tenth over 3 beats, which is kind of difficult to sing. So he repeats the chord twice here over the 8th notes. And then we get F sharp, D, A, and C, which is D7 over F sharp, which is 5/6, 5. Then we get G minor in root position, G, D, G, and B flat, which is our tonic triad. And then we have D major at the end of the cadence. Again, D, D, F sharp, and A, which would make this a half cadence in the key of G minor. Okay, looking ahead, we have what I'm calling a perfect authentic cadence in the key of C minor, but the way he gets there is kind of interesting. So we get a G minor chord here, G, D, G, and B flat, so it's a root position tonic triad. Some passing tones in the melody and the tenor, and then we get G, B flat, G, and G. So another tonic triad, just a respelling. No need to change no need to reanalyze. Got some passing tones in the lower voices. Then we get B flat, D, F, and D. Now, if we take into consideration the passing tones on the next beats, where we get E flat and G, we have a bit of a 3/7 chord here, a 6/7 chord here, which happens kind of in close proximity. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to mark this as a 3 chord here. No, I hear this mostly as a B flat major chord. When you listen to the audio excerpt and you listen to that beat, it sounds like he's on a major chord, more specifically a 3 chord. It doesn't sound like it's quite modulated to C minor yet at this point, though. I think it'll take until the next beat to do so, and I think he modulates in a very fascinating way. We have F, F, A, and C. So this would be a 7 chord in root position, right, with the F natural. But typically 7 wants to go to 3, so the fact that it's going in the opposite direction kind of makes B flat feel more like the tonic here. But I don't think there's been enough of a process in order to fully introduce a modulation. It just so happens that both of the chords also exist in the key of G minor. But I think this F major chord is the common chord between C minor and G minor. So that what's 7 here in the key of C minor is also 4 uppercase. And the reason why I think this 4 uppercase is significant is because of the fact that we get a chord following that would be expected after a 4 chord. We have D, F, B natural, and D, which is B diminished in first inversion, which would be 7, 6. And we know that 4 wants to go to 7, typically speaking. So I'm pretty confident that the modulation is happening in and around here. I think it's really a zone. You could say it happens as early as the B flat. It just doesn't sound like C minor over the B flat chord. To me, at least. It sounds more like B flat, G minor here, just because G minor was in our heads before that. And then, of course, we go to C minor next, E flat, G, C, and G, which is just C minor in first inversion. We have some passing tones in the outer voices before we get G, D, G, and B natural, which is our dominant G major. Again, we get this repeated 8th note pattern, kind of like how we got here in all of the voices, but just in the inner voices here, before we cadence on our tonic C minor, C, E flat, G, and C. Okay, next cadence, we have a similar phrase to the first phrase. We end in a half cadence in G minor. And I think right off the bat, we're in the key of G minor, so we can go ahead and call this C minor chord 4, now in the key of G minor. And then we go to G, D, G, and B flat, which is our tonic triad now in the key of G minor. We have D, D, F sharp, and A, which is a root position D major chord, which is our dominant, passing 7th in the bass. Then we have B flat, D, G, and D, which is our tonic triad in first inversion. We then have A, F sharp, C, A, and C, which is F sharp diminished in first inversion, so 7, 6, and we would expect the tonic triad in root position after that, G, G, D, and B flat, which is exactly what we get before we cadence on D major, D, F sharp, D, and A, which would make this a half cadence. So the next cadence is actually very interesting. I'm calling it an imperfect authentic cadence in the key of E flat. However, it's really interesting how E flat and A flat can kind of coexist in this melody, or just in this harmonization of this particular melody. Part of it feels like A flat, part of it feels like E flat. I ultimately decided on E flat because that's just the way the chords happen to work together. Just the cadence kind of hit me by surprise because it kind of sounded like we were cadencing on either a dominant or a subdominant. So even the idea of B flat's kind of in here as well. But I think E flat's the most likely candidate for the final analysis. So we start off with G minor, G, B flat, D, and G. That's just a root position tonic triad. We have passing tones in the tenor and the melody before we get G, D, G, and B flat, which is another tonic triad. And because we're on a new system, this is mostly just a design choice for me, or a consistency. I like to put the reanalyze, even if it's the same chord, on the next system. And this is where I think our common chord to the key of E flat is. G minor is also the mediant in the key of E flat major. We have a passing 7th in the bass, and then here's probably the most interesting harmonic quirk about the whole piece. We get E flat, D flat, G, and B flat. So that D flat changes the function of the chord to dominant. So we get, similarly to how we started the piece, a dominant of 4. So this is just a root position 5, 7 of 4, because A flat is our subdominant in the key of E flat. So we have some parallel, or we can draw some comparisons between the first phrase and how it started off with this 5 of 4 to where we have a 5 of 4 here. We have a passing tone in the alto as well. And then we go to A flat, C, E flat, and C, which is our root position A flat major triad. We have some passing tones in the lower voices as well before we get F minor, F, A flat, F, and C, which in the key of E flat is a 2 chord in root position. Some passing tones in the inner voices as well. And as we're getting ready for a cadence, it makes sense for us to have 2 followed by 5, B flat, F, A flat, and D, which would be 5, 7. Then we get B flat, F, G, and D, but I think this G is an accented non-chord tone, and really it's just the 7 being removed. So this is just a root position B flat major triad, which is our dominant without any extension, and then we cadence on 1. And interestingly, usually cadencing with the 5th of the chord is a hallmark of the half cadence, which is, I think, what was making it sound like a half cadence to me in the key of A flat. So when we get the 5 of the chord in the melody, it makes it sound dominant, especially after hearing the E flat as a dominant, as previously we only heard E flat as the dominant. So it's kind of interesting, because I think this whole melody really could be analyzed in the key of A flat as well. It just sounds more like E flat to me the more that I listen to it. But, actually, for the sake of also the reason why is because this would be more of a direct modulation to A flat. If we had analyzed this in A flat, we would be first going from 2 flats to 4 flats, which would be more difficult because there are less keys, or there aren't, let's see, are there any common chords between E flat and A flat? Yeah, they both have F minor, and they both have C minor. So they do have ways to get in between the two of them, but he chooses to do so through this dominant, and it's more of a direct modulation between the two. A flat has G diminished as opposed to G minor, so we would need the D flat earlier in order for that to be not a common chord necessarily, but something that at least shares most of a sound world with G minor. But he has 5, 7 going to 1, going to 6, going to 5, 7 of 5, and this just turns into root position here before we cadence on 5. So if you hear that as a half cadence in the key of A flat, I think that that's totally valid as well, but ultimately I think it turned around to E flat at some point, and I don't think we ever really visited A flat permanently, or with some sense of permanence rather than a tonicization, which is what's happening here. But regardless, we are moving to the key of G minor for our last cadence, which is a perfect authentic cadence in the key of G minor with that Picardy third. But I think we stay in the realm of E flat for a while, at least for a couple of beats. We have B natural, F, G, and D, which we've seen this chord before. It's G7 over B, which is 5, 6 of 6 in the key of E flat, because C is our submediant. And then we go to C minor, C, E flat, G, and C, which is our 6th chord. And here, now that we have the F sharp going on surrounding that G, I think this is now 4 in the key of G minor. Then we have C sharp, E, G, and B flat. That's C sharp diminished 7, which is 7, 7 of 5 in root position. And we would expect that to go to D because C sharp's the leading tone to D. And it does, D, A, F sharp, and A, which is a 5 chord. Passing tone in the tenor. We then have E flat, C, G, and G. I think this A is a passing tone and not the non-chord tone. I think this is just, we get a little bit of a deceptive progression here. We get the E flat in the bass, but instead of getting an E flat major chord, we get C minor over E flat. And to be fair, they're pretty much the same chord, just one has C and one has B flat. And getting ready for the cadence, we have D, D, G, and B flat, which is a 1-6-4 chord. And I think this D flat just didn't make it into the final format. So this is actually a C sharp. So the C sharp, the E, the G, and the B flat, they're both non-chord tones, but we do kind of get a little bit of a 7 of 5 action going on here before we cadence on 5. So the little neighbor tone action introduces a new chord quality before we get D, A, F sharp, and A. With that late 7th, that little enclosure A going up to C surrounding the B natural, which makes this G triad a major triad, G, B, D, and G. All in all, it's a pretty interesting chorale. I think this E7 chord, typically when we see not E7, E flat 7, typically when we see a 6-7 chord, we're thinking like augmented 7th and then it'll go to a 5, but really it's just like a descending line. I had to look because I was looking for D flats, and here, this one actually is written as D flat, and I think this one's written as C sharp. There were a couple of C sharps I had to change, and I initially had this one changed to C sharp, which would have made this an augmented 6 chord, right, with the flat 6 and the sharp 4. But no, it's written as a D flat, so it's just the descending line. And the way that E flat is introduced through a tonic dominant, like a dominant functioning tonic chord, is very interesting. Just like how the beginning of the chorale is introduced. So I think that there's probably a connection between those two. Maybe not, but I'm pretty convinced that there is. But that being said, I think we will cap the analysis off for today. We had a short chorale, so we will keep the analysis short. Thank you so much for watching the video. Thank you so much for continuing to support the channel. I see the subscriber count go up a little bit every single day, and it just makes me so happy that other people are enjoying the content and are following me along on this journey. I know I'm not the first analyst to have done this. I'm far from the first, but it's fun to really sit down and actually look at one composer's material over a span of time to actually have an understanding of their idiosyncrasies and their tendencies and their style. But that being said, I'm looking forward to tomorrow's analysis as well, and I hope you take care.